Welcome to Just Roll It Already. I'm your host, Daryl,
And I'm Jeremiah.
and sitting in with us today is our guest host, Mike.
Hey, folks.
Today we're doing Shop Talk. This is a small topic episodes that mainly focus on small subjects that deserve their own little touch on. Why don't you kick us off, Jeremiah? What are we talking about?
Well, today we're going to talk about how in systems, any real dice system, there's always this sort of, well, you take increments of damage based off of something arbitrary like falling. Almost like a diceless system, you know. Mm-hmm. I would say, like, if you fall 80 feet, you take 8d6 of damage. I kind of think that's bollocks. I feel like you should take death.
So, you think at some point what we should do is throw out the rules and the mechanics and actually go with more of a realistic point of view of how things actually should happen. Say that you did fall 100 feet. You shouldn't be able just to walk up and brush it off and continue on your merry little way.
Yeah, I don't care if you're, like, level 20 or, like, you know, like, you've seen things like this, right, Mike?
I actually completely agree with this notion to having somebody falling 100 feet, especially if they're a human race, they should be dead.
Yeah.
There isn't really coming back from that. It's a non-negotiable injury.
Yeah, and also sometimes you can even take a look at certain things. For example, even taking a baseball bat to the chest, you should be having some wounds of some kind, or even at least a story wound. Story wounds, in my opinion, about this part of the whole this subjective point of view on how damage is done sometimes when it comes to rules is a little bit less story based and more mechanic based.
Maiming. You know, never do DMs actually, I rarely if ever see DMs, or myself really, go into, like, maiming. Like, you got your arm cut off. You're not going to heal that with, like, oh, cure minor wounds. Like, that's that's not coming back. Like, that's...
Yeah, it's kind of like the time I cut off your goblin's fingers.
That's a perfect example. That's a great... See, that's a great example. Like, I lost my fingers permanently. That's not a wound. Like, sure, it's healed, but I don't have those fingers anymore. Yeah.
Which, of course, why we have such things as regeneration in the games.
Yeah.
But let's put these kind of point of views of the D20 style of games and look at more abstracted games and more indie games, because some of those do have a static health system and more in the lines of, take a look at World of Darkness, the old style of it, and even the new ones, if you know what I'm talking about. They focus more in the lines of a set amount of health. It may vary from one person to other, but only by very slightly.
Actually, off on hand, do any of us know the fall damage mechanic in World of Darkness? They must have it. I mean,
I probably think they focus more on the lines of you're just saying at a certain point you're dead.
which, see, I like that, because, like, I know there's systems that have a strict increment of damage for when you fall. Like, every 10 feet you take a D10 or a D6 or a D20, but it gets to a point where, like, that makes no sense, because, like, sure, 20 feet, okay, 30 feet, alright, 150 feet, I don't care how powerful you are, if you're falling 150 feet, you're dead. You're dead, you know?
But if you're looking at World of Darkness, rolling for is your chance of survival first off, and then usually goes to the storyteller's description in terms of your success rate or your fail rate based off your roll.
Yeah, based on your roll.
Well, I've thought of a way to kind of rationalize it sometimes, like in some games where it's like, alright, you take 8d6 of fall damage from this 80 feet. Well, maybe the cliff is at, like, a slight incline, and there's a crap ton of branches on the way down. So as you're falling, you're going through, like, bushes.
Pretty much what you're doing is you're hitting every tree and every rock and every stick and brush on the way down. And
Exactly.
Okay.
That's kind of how I have to rationalize it for it to make sense, to not instantly die flat out.
Yeah, for that, it actually works. But if we're talking about a sheer cliff or even getting hit by a car or some sort of form of, in real life or even more realistic terms, that would possibly kill you in one shot.
Yeah, there's no roll. Like, you're flat out. You're done. You're taking damage. Like, it
is game over.
Yeah. Like, you're being hit by a car that's going 80 miles per hour. You take for every 10-mile increment, you take a d6 of damage. No, at a point, you're dead. Like,
this is why, realistically, when someone goes through a car accident and they survive, depending on the degree of damage their body has taken, we look at this as kind of like a miracle.
Yeah, no kidding. But also, there's a few other times when you sit there and you look at the unreliability of dice, because sometimes there's a chance, even if you're sitting there rolling 10D whatever, all those can come up to minimal or
Maximum.
or maximum amount of damage. So sometimes even falling 30 feet extra of whatever it is, or being hit by at a certain speed or by a certain weight, you could possibly either get completely killed by a small rock or small fall, or suddenly fall out of a jet airplane and land on the ground and still live.
Like, tumble and be like, I'm fine. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I tumbled at the last moment and saved myself.
Yeah, or
Something
3,000 feet. Yeah.
something kind of similar in the same vein is I've seen a lot of players that veer away from like natural diseases, not like game-born diseases onto them, but like if you're looking at it from a realistic standpoint into a game when you're making a character, not every player character is going to be perfect.
So, for example, another thing that you just brought up that kind of sparked my interest is, say that you get a disease as well, or even poisoning, because sometimes you look at it and you say, okay, I just caught cholera. Now, if you take a look at on a WebMD or any site that actually tells you the effects of cholera, you're going to look at it and wonder, how are you not dead?
Especially in an environment that adventurers like, breathing. Cholera affects your respiratory system. You're running around, you're swinging weapons of some sort, because they're action-based games, so, like, running with cholera? No, you're not going to do that.
Even take a look at how a common cold actually inhibits another person, let alone even a strep throat.
Exactly.
Because when people play, they sit there and they say, oh, you just got infected with, roll randomly, botulism.
Or botulism.
Botulism. Congratulations. You're going to sit there now, and you, for 1d4 rounds or days, you're not going to be able to walk right. You had something you want to say, Mike?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about before I was talking about with the diseases, like with character creation.
Yeah.
The other thing with character creation is the random group that comes together. In a lot of cases, we have groups that come together and they say they want to be this class. This person wants to be this class. This person wants to be this class. And when it all comes together, they start to realize, wait a second, we're missing something very critically important, which of course is their healer.
Yeah, typically.
The healer is left out. Now you introduce a disease into a campaign, and I'm sorry, Mr. Wizard, Mr. Sorcerer, or whatnot, you're not going to be able to save your companion over here because your magic is not based in healing.
Actually, that's another. I was going to say, getting out of the morbid aspect, another thing that could go into that, really are dice involved with this when it comes to healing increments? Recuperation. Like, I know there's games where, they go off of, whatever your fortitude or const or stamina, whatever your health-based stat is, on every day you regenerate the modifier or some sort of amount from that, divide it by 2/3, and every day you get that much health back. Well, it's that doesn't feel also realistic considering when you have, say in some games, I have 400 health, and I have, a modifier of 3, so every day I regenerate 3 health. So at a low level, I regenerate faster, my total percentage of health. But at a higher level, I cannot regenerate at all, basically. I am feeble. That's a system where it should just be automatically alright, after a week you're good,
Well, even a minor fracture by itself takes X amount of weeks to even a couple of months to heal.
Yeah, well, that's true, and you never look at that, never.
That's just a minor fracture.
No, that is true. Then also you can take a look in the aspect of the rules lawyers type of people, because they'll sit there and fight you for this, because if you're the game master of this kind of system or setting, or even game in general, even if there's rules based on saying, no, I don't die because it takes this much points of damage and I have this much HP. So when you're facing people who are complaining about, oh, you're doing an unfair thing, you got to be aware when you kind of do this kind of technique, you expect some kind of unfair backlash, because nobody likes being told that they're failing or dying or they've been maimed.
Well, I do, but I'm probably a bit of a masochist when it comes to characters.
You're a very interesting breed of person when it comes down to gaming.
So, yeah, I don't care if your Ogre Fighter Krug has 400 health, and you think that, I fell 200 feet, but I have 400 health, so I should be okay. Well, no, you fell 200 feet. You're a red stain on the ground, man. You've exploded. Your character's gone. Yeah.
And even then, a halfling is more likely to take less damage than a full-on giant, because let's take it mass and terminal velocity as opposed to ground impact. Let's just say, you ever see a whale fall out of the sky? You haven't, because it's impossible. When you do, that little cricket's not going to take much damage as the whale does.
Exactly.
So all kind of agree that implementing a common sense system for damage for such events as falling might be beneficial.
Yeah, it could be beneficial into the type of game you want to do. If, for example, you take a D20 style game like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder and suddenly flip it around and do some sort of weird twist on the damage, then suddenly you made this game that everyone's invincible into could quite possibly die here type of game.
Yeah, and it's just, food for thought when it comes to how you folks out there play your games. Be you a player or a DM, might just be a suggestion. When it comes to some things, where does it become just flat out death, or just where there's no dice involved? We may, in later episodes, expand on this into a bigger subject, because this can cover so much things and topics, but, it's a good opener.
Yeah. So, closing this out, any thoughts on yours about this, Mike?
I was thinking in terms of the DM or whoever might be running their campaign, when it comes to someone falling, they might have maybe an ulterior motive with that particular character, and they might decide to step in. I mean, there are plenty of things within role play that involves flight that could stop it. So
Yeah.
I was just thinking, just like the character's death, the character's saving also has to come from, I would believe, the storyteller or DM or whoever's running the game at that point.
Okay. What about you, Jeremiah?
Going on that same note, I mean, that could open up a whole other topic when it comes to just storytelling in general, but Deus Ex Machina sort of things could come into play when it comes to things of that nature, and I can see that, and it can help you rationalize such things, but yeah, I would agree in such a sense, yeah.
Okay. On that note, we're going to close this episode out. You can tell us in the comments below about what you guys think about this subject and what you guys would take in perspective of this. Anyways, I'm Daryl.
I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Michael.
And have a good night and good day.